I just feel like I was born to build things from an early age, this like God-given gift that Adam is going to build stuff.
What was ingrained in me as being important was doing good work.
By age 12 or 13, we were doing shows all over the Midwest. We were doing things like levitating people, sawing people in half. It was something that I felt really comfortable with because I could be my true self on that stage.
We're going through the process of buying out our parents in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. It was nerve-wracking because we don't even know if there's gonna be a business.
You're listening to Seasoned Leaders, a podcast about leadership, growth, and the power of hospitality. I'm Adam Guy, and in our first episode, Jack Dawson and I take you inside the story of how Upper Crust Food Service was built, the risks, the lessons, and the unlikely partnership that changed everything.
Jack Dawson, how crazy is it that we are sitting here together on a podcast describing to the world about our business partnership and our friendship that has come together over the last year?
A heck of a lot less crazy now, and that it's feeling normal to me now. But man, if you would ask me about this even a year ago, yeah, crazy out there.
It's the most unlikely story to go from fierce competitors to business partners in a period of such a short period of time.
Yep.
We competed against each other for over a decade.
Yep.
Right, in the same industry.
That's
but
true.
The fact that, we've found each other here in business and now we're working together to build this brand, I don't know that I still have my mind completely wrapped around that.
The overall shock for me, I think has faded away, right? Honestly, sitting here and having this conversation with you it's kind of cool to put it in perspective and think about.
Let's just jump back to the early days. There are some really great stories about how your business started. And it really is this all-American story of a family business where your parents had a skill that was God-given to them in hospitality, and they sort of leveraged that and jumped into this business that ultimately you ended up getting involved with. So can you take me back to the early days and maybe tell me a story about the first time that you realized that your parents were really gifted in hospitality?
Yeah, if I think about that first time I had that feeling, I guess it would be this big family Christmas party that my parents would throw every single year in the big city of Monticello, Illinois. About, 3,500, 4,000 people or so when I was growing up. Felt big at the time, right? And my parents had this big old yellow house right on the main street in town. And every year, without fail, we had this Christmas party. And they would go all out. I'm talking beef tenderloin carving station, shrimp cocktail. They'd have a couple chefs on site handling the food, the bar service set up in the back. The house was done up to the nines. I remember Mom making us all do chores leading up to the party to make sure everything looked good. It just seemed like everyone in town was there. But it was always important that it be a great time for everybody, right? I think that was always something that was clear to me, is that we cared about everybody that was coming, enjoying themselves. And that has stuck with me to this day. That, I think, was burned into us at a very early age.
You understand as a little kid that your parents have this gift for hospitality. And then your dad, it sounds like, sort of took the first leap into actually turning that into a profession.
Classic food service story, I think, where it may have taken Dad a couple more years to graduate from college than he had originally intended. And I think fell in love while he was working in restaurants, fell in love with the business. And even after was running a fine dining restaurant there in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. We like to joke about the fine dining. And
it's kind of the fine dining capital.
I think so. Yeah. There's so many quality restaurants there. Yeah. So he was working at a restaurant in town. I believe it was called the Autumn Tree. And they were really trying to do great stuff, and they had a lot of good regulars. One of the regulars in town was a woman, last name Hendrick, and she owned a private residence hall in Champaign on campus at the University of Illinois, kind of on the far side of campus. For some reason or another at the time, I don't think they were having a lot of success getting students to live in the residence hall. And she thought that maybe if they had great food, then that would help people want to come live there. Well, it turns out she was right, but she made Dad an offer to come and run their dining program over there. And that classic story of someone wanting to get out of working 70, 80 hours a week. And that was known. And Dad worked a lot back then. And I think this was a good opportunity. And in this process, they started the services for the residence hall. They were doing some stuff for the university, for the big hospital in town, weddings, standard catering company kind of stuff. And at one point, there was a regular that had been coming into the restaurant that was also either an advisor on the house corporation of a local fraternity in Champaign-Urbana. And when they lost their chef, I just reached out to Dad. I think out of nowhere else to go. Hey, I know this person from this restaurant. Maybe he knows how they could help us out. And he just happened to be in a position to say, we're going to do this. And really became the first person in the country to provide professional services for Greeks, right? So pretty cool story how we came into this. And then, I mean, I could go on forever. It's also just really cool how then Mom came in. So Mom really came in and legitimized the operations there on the food service side at Hendrick House, and ultimately came and did that for us at College Fresh too.
Thank goodness for moms.
Amen.
They always come and save the day. Yeah. Okay, so you're at this point in the story not even born yet.
Yeah, you're right.
So this goes on, and your parents basically build up the Hendrick House business, help to build up the Hendrick House business on the food service side. And so what did that turn into over a short period of time?
Yeah, and I should be clear, and say thanks. The Hendrick family was always so great for us. I grew up at the Hendrick House. It's a good anecdote that I really grew up in the dry storage room at Hendrick House. What they built together with Hendrick family and a woman named Diane, who actually works for us now on the housekeeping side, was, I think, when we left Hendrick House to start College Fresh, there was 32 fraternities and sororities that we were feeding on campus. There was a full operational catering business. They had an herb garden on the roof. There was a private organic farm that they were running in town. I mean, it was a big operation there at the University of Illinois.
I got to go back. You kind of just breezed right over this. But you said you grew up in the dry storage room of the Hendrick's house. And that to me already answers so many questions that I have about Jack Dawson. But what was that like growing up in food service, and how did that sort of shape you and influence, the decisions that you're making today as a leader?
But looking back on it now, you can see that, I was around it all the time. What was important, what was ingrained to me as being important was doing good work. There were people that cared. They really wanted the food service. I remember anytime there'd be a transition with the chef or someone on the team, you'd get really excited, right? There was a chef at the time. I'll never forget the chef Sergio when I was a kid. And he came in and everybody got really excited because the food was just really great. We got really excited about that. And that stuff filters into you when you're a kid, right? That's frankly something I should be keeping in mind as I raise my young kids too.
Oh, I think that's such a great point. And I was thinking about that while you were talking about that, because for me, raising my 3 kids that I have now and wanting to be a great example for them, there's no better way to raise the next generation of entrepreneurs than to expose them to entrepreneurship at an early age and put them in situations where they have to see hard work and the rewards of hard work. But
that's a good point, because I think our stories are a little bit different, where I think it was clear to you early on that that's what you wanted to do. And I will ask you that, but a little bit, but for me, that was not the case, right? I was, again, had a great childhood, grew up through high school, was into athletics. And I think at one point in my life, I wanted to be an architect, right? And then I wanted to be a math teacher because I was good at math, and someone told me I should be a math teacher, right? So I thought at one point I thought I'd be a math teacher and a coach. That changed when I took the 3rd level of calculus in college and said, no, thank you.
Explain to me then when that changed, when you gave up on your dream of being a math teacher. Which I can't even, that dream's not even in the universe for me to even think about. So you gave up on your dream of that. You realized maybe I'm not going to be a coach long term here. What was sort of the transition that brought you into the business?
I think my experience at the University of Illinois in the entrepreneurialism program, a lot of people from that program went into either consulting or sales, right? So I had about the easiest entrance into entrepreneurialism that anybody ever has, I like to say. So very fortunate in that regard. But coming through that program, they would always have guest speakers come in. And honestly, one of the most impactful ones was a gentleman who owned a string of McDonald's franchises, and just the advice and the way he talked about how passionate he was about trying to do good work. But there were some other great ones, a lot of great entrepreneurs from the University of Illinois.
Okay, so your dad starts College Fresh.
Yep.
Your mom ends up at some point leaving Hendrick's house to help within the family business. Yep. And then that business is growing. There comes a time when the next generation gets involved. Tell me the story about the next generation, you and your siblings getting involved in College Fresh.
Yeah. Oh, I think we were in maybe year 3 or 4. And we had been growing pretty steadily at that point. And I remember we were having a conversation and someone asked how many employees we had. And I want to say at the time, maybe we had 200 employees. And the anecdote, I don't know if it's exactly how it went, but Annie was in shock that we had 200 or 300 employees and no HR department, right? So that was when we realized we got to get her involved. And kind of like Mom did, with Hendrick House. Mom did the same with College Fresh, actually, but Annie came in a little bit before her and really solidified what we were doing. It took us from the Wild West of the College Fresh days of, okay, no, you can't do this, you can't say this. It helped us become more professional. Tom had, I think, always unofficially been with College Fresh. He was managing tech for College Fresh, even when it wasn't a full-time thing. He's had a great job at the University of Illinois for a long time, a lot of responsibilities there. But at some point also, we needed to really bulk up our tech, our security. And we brought him on. It was supposed to be part-time, but he ended up working full-time as well. So through no strategy, all three of us brought our own unique strengths to the business. And it's just kind of cool how it worked out. Just interesting kind of how it kind of seemed like it was meant to be.
So things must have gone well, and you and your siblings must have enjoyed working in the business, because at some point we all know that there was a transition that occurred, which was, your parents retiring and the three siblings moving in as owners. So just walk us through kind of real quickly what that process was like in a family business to pass the business on to the next generation.
Right.
How did that feel?
Well, I mean, it was, again, I think I feel really fortunate how it went. We were, I think, because mom and dad had seen this before we bought mom and dad out, they bought their partner Russ out. So I was able to see them have some, I don't know if it was hard conversations, but direct conversations about where they see this thing going in the future. My dad has always said for him and one of his best friends, Russ, to start a business together, build a business together, and then exit together as friends is very unique. So he feels very fortunate there. So we're going through the process of buying out our parents in 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Perfect timing.
When we were starting the business, when we were really going into the conversations about buying them out, it was nerve-wracking because we don't even know if there's going to be a business at that time. I don't know if people block out, or I think I do sometimes, truly the unknown of what this was going to look like. Is this going to be forever? We pretty quickly worked through all that and hey, that's not going to be the case. But
yeah, I got to tell you, I'm having PTSD right now because this room that we set up for this podcast is also the room that we did our war room during COVID.
Oh yeah.
And basically watched as, every account that we were serving went from, yes, we're serving food, to, wait, maybe we might not serve food, to, we are definitely not serving any more food. And so as you're telling that story and thinking about you buying a business and transitioning during that period, I mean, there had to be a lot of excitement that you're passing it on, but also some fear around what is next for College Fresh.
Absolutely. I think of myself as the luckiest entrepreneur in the world because I was going around and making promises and delivering, but I was doing it with dad and Russ's money, right? I saw myself pretty quickly in as the leader. There's that reality then that buying this business now, it's on us. And if I fail, as we were growing, said, I'm going to be the leader. I'm the president. I've built this. I want to do it. We all kind of fell into place very nicely, but the understanding that as one of three owners and as the president of this organization, it was a lot. It was a lot of responsibility, and the COVID thing just added a whole nother level to it. Plus the fact that we were making this transaction that, if failed, could ruin me financially, right? At the time, fortunately, we continued to do work the right way, and that didn't happen. But yeah, very, very stressful. All right, now I feel like I've been hogging all the airtime here. So I'm going to flip it back on you. Why don't you tell me the story? Because I like to tease you about being a magician and everything else you did before you even started Upper Crust. So your turn.
Absolutely. So I think what I think is most interesting about our stories colliding is how different the beginnings were, right? And the fact that you can have sort of two different paths that ultimately lead to the same place is something that's really interesting to me. So for me, I just feel like I was born to build things from an early age. Just kind of this God-given gift that Adam is going to build stuff. And it goes as simple to say my favorite thing to do as a kid was to build my Legos. And I would make these big Lego houses and Lego villages in my house. That type of stuff was just really fun to me because I could work hard on something. I could see the outcome of it, right, of the hard work. So entrepreneurship has just always been in my blood. I feel like I have a lot of gratitude towards my parents because they were entrepreneurial as well, my mom in particular. So I saw this entrepreneurship mindset modeled within my home. My dad was interesting because he always had to have the real job. Right. And so my mom owned a furniture store. She owned a clothing boutique. She did a bunch of different things on her own that were entrepreneurial. But at the end of the day, we had to put food on the table. right? And we had to know that we had a guaranteed income source because, as we all know, working for yourself sometimes that can be a tough road, and there's high highs and low lows. And so my dad was kind of always the steady one in the family that held the job. But one thing they inspired me with early on was they told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And that sounds so cliche, but now that I'm raising my kids, it really is a hard thing to do as a parent to not try to tell your kids what they should do, right? And what path they should take. And it's really now that I'm a dad, it's out of protection, right? You want them to be successful. You want them to live a good life. And my parents just really kind of just encouraged me and said, hey, if you've got an idea, go for it. And so I find myself now, as my kids come up with ideas, trying to support them instead of tell them what could go wrong or those types of things. So from a very early age, we lived in a neighborhood called the Grasslands. And the Grasslands in Columbia, Missouri, which is where the University of Missouri is. The Grasslands happens to be a neighborhood that's catty corner from the football stadium. All right. So we literally could sit at home and hear the roar of the football stadium if there was a touchdown. So I'm playing in my yard as a kid. I remember this vividly, probably 6 or 7 years old. And I just see the masses of people that are parking on the streets of our neighborhood and walking to the football game every Saturday during the fall. And so I had this idea, like a lot of entrepreneurs do with their kids, I'm going to set up a lemonade stand on the corner here. And so I set up the lemonade stand and I got all my lemonade made and did all my work and sold out of the lemonade, the first game that we had. And so I was hooked. And then I transitioned into something that's a little bit of an odd transition from there, which was I had the bug, but during the rest of the year, there was no traffic in my neighborhood to buy lemonade, right? So I knew I wanted to do something else. I knew I wanted to stay entrepreneurial. And I was always interested in magic. I think every 5-year-old kid is, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's not a 5-year-old kid that doesn't love getting a magic set for Christmas or whatever. It's a great go-to gift. So I opened up my magic set at Christmas at age 5, and I just fell in love with doing the tricks. I grabbed my sister. I said, "You're my assistant," right? And we would do shows in the living room with this box of 25 tricks that I had. And over the next 3 or 4 years, I asked for Christmas and birthday from all of my family. They would say, "Hey, what do you want?" And I would always say, "I want this magic trick. I want this magic trick." So I started sort of building a little bit of this show that I could actually have maybe 30 minutes of material and grew it to an hour's worth of material. So finally at age 7 or 8, I had enough of a show and I had practiced my show enough in front of my parents and family and friends that some people had heard that I was doing magic. And so my dad got a phone call, and it was from a retirement home in Columbia. And they said, "Hey, we heard your son's into magic. We have this get together every month. We think our residents would love it if he would come and do a show for them. And we would pay him to come do that." So I'm transitioning sort of out of the lemonade. I found my new thing. I go do my first show for this retirement home. And my sister and I had about 30 minutes of material. But I also realized what a great first audience that was for me in magic, because I could have told them I made a motorcycle disappear and they would have loved it, right? And so one thing that I feel like with my entrepreneurship that's been interesting is that sort of each step in the journey has kind of been a step towards the next thing that I'm trying to build. And so I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get caught up in getting upset if something they do doesn't work, right? Or if something they don't have the outcome that they feel like they should. And we talk a lot about, hey, I put in this effort, I should get this output. And that isn't always the case in entrepreneurship, right? Sometimes you have a great idea, but it's the wrong time, right? Sometimes you believe that you have a good idea and maybe it's not as great of an idea as you thought. Maybe sometimes your price point is off. But there's so many things that could happen in the course of a business. And so for me, I just feel really grateful as I look back at my entrepreneurial journey that like each of these things that I participated in, that I worked on, that I refined, sort of shaped me for the next step of my journey. And I only think sometimes you even realize that you're being shaped during those times. But those experiences are what make you successful at the next venture. So I did this magic show. And we actually turned it into a legitimate business. So we were traveling all over the Midwest and doing shows. And I had my sister maintained on as my assistant, but I also had a crew, right? I had some family that helped me. My aunt was influential in helping us travel. I mean, we were doing shows and selling out theaters, and I wasn't old enough to drive the car to the theater. So by age 12 or 13, we were doing shows all over the Midwest. We were selling out theaters. We were doing corporate gigs. So we kind of grew the show from doing small stuff that you would think you'd give your kid that came in that magic set to doing things like levitating people, sawing people in half. We made a motorcycle disappear in the show. So we were doing legitimate stuff that required a crew, that required smoke and mirrors, that required lighting, music, all of that kind of stuff. It was something that I felt really comfortable with because I could be my true self on that stage. And I think that's something that we all search for. What is our true self? And for me, that was something that I had practiced it a lot. I knew that I was good at it. I enjoyed it. And the person that I want to be is the person that's super comfortable to be able to walk up to somebody and have confidence and be able to say, hey, I'm Adam. Great to meet you. I struggled doing that in a crowd where I don't know people, but at a magic show that I was the one on the sign and 1,000 people had bought a ticket to come see me, I could be that person for an hour, right? And be totally comfortable and really be the person I wanted to be. So I grew up a lot during that time as an entrepreneur, and it was really great. So then we transitioned to the wristband business. And so college hits and I go to college. It's a little bit hard for me to keep the magic gig going because I joined a fraternity. I was involved in Missouri basketball. So I was trying to do that my freshman year. So there just wasn't enough time in the day, really. But I still had that entrepreneur bug, and I knew that I wanted to continue to do something. And so at that point, my sister was also in college, so I'd kind of lost my assistant for my shows. And so I transitioned to this wristband business. And kind of the story behind that that's kind of interesting is that if you remember back to the Lance Armstrong wristbands that came out, so those were all the rage. Everybody wanted to have a Lance Armstrong wristband. And there was actually a black market for them, right? The whole idea was to raise money, and they were $1 a piece. But to get a Lance Armstrong wristband, you had to pay $5 to buy one on eBay or from somebody. The $4 wasn't going to Livestrong, right? It was going to whoever was marking up that wristband. So seeing that opportunity, I remember vividly, I was driving with my dad. We were driving to a neighboring town, and I said, Dad, those wristbands that came out, I said, I think that I could make those for other causes. I think I can make them for sports teams. I could make them for basically anything. They're so hot right now. Why does it only have to be for cancer research? Like it could be for so many things. And so I told my family this idea to start this company, that we were going to do these wristbands. And this is just this kind of funny, the mindset of an entrepreneur. So I had made some money doing my magic shows. I had saved up some money from doing that. And I went to my family and I said, I'm going to do my first order. It was for the University of Missouri. I was going to make black and gold wristbands that said "Go Tigers" on them. And I said, I'm going to order 10,000 of these things. And everybody around me said, "What? Are you nuts? Why wouldn't you order 100 of them and see if you can sell them?" And the reason is because if I ordered more, my price per unit was less. And I knew that I could put them at a price point that people would buy them. And I felt really confident that I could sell 10,000 of these wristbands. And so I just went for it. And I ordered these 10,000 wristbands and they shipped to me. And I remember grabbing the pledges at the time that were in study hall in my fraternity house. So I was a sophomore or junior in college at the time. And I went down to study hall and I said, hey, who's done studying? Who wants to go help me do some marketing? And I got some hands that got raised. So we went over to the University of Missouri. Missouri was playing Kansas, which is a big rivalry in basketball. It was the middle of January. It was freezing cold, sub-zero temperatures. So we bundled up. I made this little flyer that had QR codes didn't exist. It had a website address on it with a picture of the wristband and a black and white little print off. And basically people could go to the website, they could use PayPal, and they could buy a wristband or two from this website. So we went during the game and we plastered every single window on the parking lot of the University of Missouri that were at the basketball game, the people that were at the basketball game. So we spent 2.5, 3 hours doing this. We're frozen solid. I go back to the fraternity house. I don't think anything of it, really. Go to bed, right? Go out with my friends, hang out with my friends that night. It was a Friday night. When I woke up in the morning, I opened up my student email, which was attached to my PayPal. And I had 7,000 unread emails in my student email. And overnight, we had sold all 10,000 of these wristbands on this PayPal website. And of course, in true entrepreneurship fashion, I had then a big dilemma on my hand, which was I didn't think about the fact that people were going to buy one of these, two of these, maybe three at the most. Now I had to have a shipping operation, right? I had 10,000 wristbands in 10 boxes. I was now going to have to put these in 1,000 packages. and get them out to people who expected to receive a product. So this was really the first time that I had to build something from scratch and really figure out what am I going to do next, because I haven't totally thought this through. So I took the same group of my pledges that were there in the house, and I guess we call them new members now. So the new members, and I said, hey, when you guys are done with your study hall every day, I've got a job for you. I will pay you to do this. We can package up wristbands. I think it took us 2 months, which is not the best customer service in the world, to receive something 2 months later. I think it took us about 2 months to ship all of those out. But the key in this in entrepreneurship is that I knew at that moment that I could build something around that. When you sell 10,000 wristbands overnight, it would have been really easy for me to say, all right, I don't have to worry about beer money for the next 2 years of college. I just sold these 10,000 wristbands. But my mind doesn't work like that. My mind was, wait, if this was this popular one time, how can I multiply this and make it that popular multiple times? Yeah. So the company that I bought the wristbands from was a promotional products company in California, and they actually screwed up, and they had the packing slip on the boxes from the factory in China that made the wristbands. So I pulled the packing slip off and I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, they paid a lot less for these wristbands than I paid them. And so I took the money I made from that first wristband order. I called my dad up and I said, Dad, I've got a birthday present for you. We're going to China. And so I was scared to go to China by myself. So I bought 2 tickets to China. My dad and I went there. I had researched online. I found a translator. Pretty hilarious story about him. Obviously, he spoke Mandarin, so he could be our translator. I spoke pretty good English, a little bit broken English. But when he introduced myself, he said, hey, my name is Chandler. And I said, well, that's an interesting name. And he was like, well, yeah, Friends is my favorite TV show. And so I had Chandler as my sort of liaison in China. He set us up with a factory. We started producing these wristbands. We put up a website. And next thing you know, we were selling tens of millions of wristbands all over the world from this wristband company. And all of it, to tie this whole story together, was done out of my fraternity room.
Wow.
At the ATO house at the University of Missouri. I also avoided trouble with the university. That was kind of the first time that I'd ever been called to the principal's office, if you will. So the day after I flyered every car in the parking lot, I actually had a university police officer that showed up at the fraternity house looking for me and explained to me that that was private property and that I'm not allowed to put, flyers on cars on private property. But it was a great lesson for me in, hey, you've got this student, right, who's built this business, and then the university, being business minded themselves, was like, hey, maybe we could get a cut of the action here and get in. And so they were actually really cool about it, because I think they were pretty amazed by the story behind the student that went out and did this. And so the lady in charge of licensing actually helped me license future products almost as a mentor, which was kind of a neat process.
I might regret saying this too, because it might send the wrong message to our team, to my kids or whatever, but how ornery I am that I take away. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And as an entrepreneur, the fact that you just went and did that, right? If you have to go through 20 different hoops, that maybe it never would have happened, right? So
that's right.
I think that's something that all people that are growing and starting a business go through. So, and that for some reason that struck a chord with me too. You just do it.
You just got to do it, and you just got to find a way, and you got to do whatever it takes. Yeah. Ultimately, I had my first M&A deal, which I didn't know was an M&A deal, with my wristband company, and I had a promotional product company that reached out, and they had promotional products of all different kinds, but they weren't yet selling silicone wristbands.
Okay.
And so the way their operation worked was they basically had 1-800 numbers for every product, and they had a website for every product. And when you called about a custom lanyard, they would answer the phone and say, custom lanyards, can we help you? Yeah. They wanted to be able to answer the phone and say, direct wristbands, can I help you?
Sure.
Right. And so this gentleman approached me. He said, hey, I'd like to buy your business. Well, I'm still in college at the time, but ultimately I decided that the business was worth more to him than it was to me, and so I ended up selling that business. That left me in a little bit of a predicament, because I had abandoned sort of my magic career, and now I had sold the business that I had started. At this time, I was out of college, and I'm sitting there going, well, what do I do next? And so anyone who's been dropped on their head as a child, I was like, what about the restaurant business? This seems awesome.
Yeah, smart. Yeah.
And so I ended up buying a Cold Stone Creamery for anyone who has ever eaten there.
My wife worked at a Cold Stone. Did you know that when she was in college?
No way.
Yeah.
Did she sing the songs?
Yeah. Yeah. Her brother used to go in all the time to make her sing the songs for him and his friends.
So it was one of the best things that you could do if you had someone you knew that worked there. Just make sure you tip and ring the bell so that they have to start one of the songs. Yes. So no, I'm gonna have to reminisce with her about that for sure. But I had this Cold Stone Creamery. It was a great first business, honestly, to get in the hospitality space and in the food and beverage space, especially because there really wasn't any waste.
Low overhead,
right? I mean, pretty low overhead. I mean, my leasehold was kind of expensive, but when it came to the product itself, we didn't throw away ice cream because it was frozen. So we'd pretty much sell through the ice cream, and then our mix-ins were candy. Yep. Right. And candy is pretty shelf stable for a pretty decent amount of time. So it was just a gut feeling. It was a place that was busy. It was a place that looked exciting, looked fun, looked like it would keep me out of trouble and keep me busy. And so I purchased that business. And then the transition to Upper Crust was actually kind of fun because within this building that I was in, Cold Stone was on one corner of the building, and there was this bakery called Upper Crust Bakery on the other corner. Cool. I had been kind of watching this bakery. I went in there for breakfast sometimes. I'd eat lunch there. They weren't open for dinner. They had this big ballroom facility in the back that really didn't have very many events booked at it. It was a great location right down on campus. And so I kind of had always had in my mind that I thought that business could be run more efficiently and could be more successful than maybe what it looked like on the outside was happening. And so the manager who I had become friends with came over to me, and this was probably November, let's say, right around Thanksgiving time. And he said, hey, just to let you know, we're going to close at the end of the year. So we've kind of hit the end of our run. It's just not working for us. It's been great being your neighbor, but I just wanted to come over and tell you personally before you heard from somebody else. So after giving the guy a hug and thinking about making him feel better about it, I couldn't sleep that night. I was like, I need to buy that business, right? I knew they still had a lease. I knew the owner was in a situation where they were on the hook for the lease. And so my pitch to the owner was to basically go and say, hey, listen, I'll take this over. I'll take over your lease. I'll eliminate all your, liabilities here. And you can move on and start a fresh chapter. And I'm going to take this restaurant over and try to make a go at it. And so the transaction happened really quickly. I think it was a no-brainer for them, right? Because they still had 3 or 4 years of paying, $80,000 or $90,000 a year on a lease. So they were happy to get out of that. And that's where I started in hospitality. And that little bakery happened to be called the Upper Crust. Cool. So that's kind of the beginning of that. And when I bought that, I remember going in on January 1st because we were closed on January 1st for the holiday. And I wanted my parents to see the business I had just bought. So I brought my mom and dad down. And they came down and they were walking through the business, and we were walking through the sort of the lobby of the business, and everyone's all excited and, oh, this is great. I can't remember that many moments where there was disappointment from my mom towards me in my early childhood, but this is a moment where she was certainly disappointed in me. And I'm walking through the lobby and I said, I wonder what time this place opens tomorrow. And she just swung her head around as fast as she could. And she was like, wait a second, you bought this restaurant and you don't know what time it opens tomorrow? And I was like, no, but we should go just check the door. It's probably on the door. And so I go up to the door. I see it opens at 8:00. And I'm like, I guess I'll get here at 6. Right? Guess I'll get here at 5. And to your point earlier, just doing it, right? And going and figuring it out. I just knew as an entrepreneur.
Reasons not to buy that restaurant.
100%. Right? I mean, on paper, I don't think anyone would have bought that, right? Why do you want to buy something that's failing, right? But as an entrepreneur, you have a dream, you have a vision to do that. And so, and I've just always been a builder, and I knew I could build. So to kind of make a long story short, we started at Upper Crust. I showed up at 5 a.m. that next day. I met the staff. We started getting big into catering. So we started booking that ballroom like crazy. We added 3 or 4 more ballrooms around town because we realized that catering was a better piece of business than the restaurant piece was in terms of just being able to be consistent. And so we really focused on catering. And then we got a call from the University of Missouri. And it was a call from a sorority and a fraternity, 2 separate calls. I think the fraternity call came first. And it said, hey, we've done a ton of events at your facilities. Would you be willing? We've lost our chef, similar to your story at Hendrick's house. Would you guys be willing to come in and put a chef in our house and cook us some of that great food that you do for our Founders Day events and our socials and mixers and things like that? So we had no idea if it could be a business. We had no idea if we'd make $1. We had no idea if we'd even be good at it. But at that moment in time, I was like, yes, this is a problem. And so that's that's kind of how Upper Crust came to be.
Again, 1,000 reasons not to, but you just did it. I think we can apply that to it. A lot of different chapters we've worked with over the years, both of us, right?
Right.
It's on a campus we've never been to, or it's one of these conversations where maybe there's only 16 or 17 students in the house. So it's hard. And I know you guys had done the same. We had done the same, but also at College Fresh, we always had that attitude of we're not going to turn down any opportunity to partner with another chapter anywhere else. And so just seeing those things you're talking about, applying it to what we're doing now too is pretty cool.
Every journey has a beginning, and today you heard ours. In the next episode of Seasoned Leaders, we'll tell the rest of the story, how competition turned into collaboration, and how Upper Crust and College Fresh became one. Until then, thanks for listening, and stay seasoned.